Hello guys, this is Billy and this is my final project presentation for our capstone class. There's actually a lot to go through, so I'm going to go straight into it. A little bit of background about this project is back in the spring of 2018, I was in INF 300, which was Foundations and Information Networking, something like that. In that class, I was part of a group project where we were working on the idea of having a platform where students were helping each other out by renting textbooks out to each other, by sharing classroom tips with each other, and maybe even to by sharing tutoring services with each other. Now, in that class, we didn't actually construct the project. We ended up mocking it up on Facebook groups. But for my capstone class, I wanted to actually build, on that idea and build it. And this is kind of the what we got as a result. My project uses technologies like HTML, CSS, Bootstrap, PHP, MySQL, SQLi, Ajax, and jQuery. And I'll tell you guys up front that the coding capabilities for this project were definitely beyond my capacity. Especially the back end component, things like validating certain things or setting up a user and login system and other stuff. I am not experienced enough. I'm not knowledgeable enough to do that from scratch. So up front, I'll disclose that how did I go about it then? Is that I actually had to look. When you don't know, you got to look it up, right? So I had to look up two projects. One for a social media site, kind of like almost kind of similar to a Facebook clone, and the other one was a forum project. And my project is basically the integration of these two products and the adapting the code and etc. to make it what it is now. So what I have the links to the projects in my actual executive summary to give them credit, but my project is basically the adaptation of code to make it fit more with what I'm trying to do here. So let me go show you guys through my demo, kind of what this is about. Here you see the first page is a login page. You can also, if you don't have a login, the user would have to register for one, obviously. So this is where you would do that. Since I already do have one, I'm going to just go ahead and log in. From there, it takes you to an index page, which is kind of like your first landing page. And the main thing about this page, guys, is that the portal, let's call this a portal, where you want to go, the options of where you want to go, and the feed. So with the portal, it asks you, what do you need, Billy? And if you were someone else, the PHP would dynamically load up, whatever your name was when you created your username. And you can choose from an options of want textbook rentals, you want class tips, or do you want tutoring? So let's say you wanted classroom tips, for example. The classroom tips takes you to the forum aspect of this project, where here you guys can see that the classes that are available for classroom tips right now are those in computer science, those in information networking, and those in accounting. And the specific classes are in blue here. So from here, a user would go pick the class that they are wondering about. Let's say you're wondering about computer science 2. And you're like, what time was that exam on, Tuesday or whatever it would be. So the user here would add a topic to this form, and you'd be like, time of first exam. Hey, and like, hey guys, when was that exam again? And you would post, and once you post it, it would dynamically populate, as you can see here. And from here, yourself or any other user can reply to your post by saying like, hey, I'm going to reply to myself. So, hey, it was at 7 o'clock. And you would reply. And you would see who replied. If it was someone, obviously. I could go in more into the back, like what's behind all this. There's database tables that are behind this. There's PHP code that's behind this. But if I was to talk about that for everything, I would quickly run over my time limit. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. Basically, guys, that's how the forum works for kind of works as kind of like Blackboard in a sense. Just a place where people can just post topics, answer questions, post questions, answer them, reply to them, and etc. for people to get an idea of what their classes are like. The second thing I'd like to talk about is textbook rental. I came back to our index page. Say you're looking for a textbook rental. You click on this, and it dynamically populates a table that shows the textbook name, like what textbooks are on the system, the name of them, who owns them, the username of the person that owns that book, what category that book belongs to, and the course that it corresponds to, and also whether it's available or not. My failure here is that I did not, I don't know if I would know how, but I did not have dynamically populate the username in a way that would allow you to click on it, and take you to the profile page where you would make contact with that person. There may or may not be complicated PHP code that has to go into that to make that happen. But for the purposes of of this video per se, imagine that it worked, right? Say you wanted to check out survey of computer science from me, so you click on it. Imagine you clicked on it, but instead I'm gonna click on this, and it's gonna take you to my profile page. From there, if you wanted to rent that book, you'd have to post to me. So you click on this, and this comes up, and you'd say, "Hey, do you still have that book? Have that survey of computer science book?" And you would post. I think this posting might use Ajax technology. I don't quite know what that means, but once you posted that, this feed that was already here gets populated with the question that you had. I basically asked myself a question, but if it was someone else, it would say your name and, "Hey, do you have that survey of computer science textbook?" Basically, from there, if I was to get on from there, I could reply to myself in this instance. "Yes, I do. Where can we meet so I can rent it to you?" And you can post, and that would populate there. Or I could go, or since if you did post, there would be a link to your username profile, and I would click on it and take me to there, and I would post back like the example user would in the situation. And this feed, guys, is a feed of when the person, whoever's profile this is, has posted to like a feed like this, or when someone posts to this person. So down here, you can see that Tuco posted to. So that's the kind of feed that this is. So let me keep moving quickly because there's a lot to talk about. So that's kind of how that works, guys. Imagine, if you will, tutoring isn't anything right now. It's a blank link. So imagine, if you will, tutoring working kind of like how textbook rental is, populating a table where you're able to click and go over to that profile page of the user and ask them for help. This feed, guys, really fast, is it's basically ask anybody anything, quick question, let's say, kind of feed, where if you had a quick question and you want to broadcast it to anybody that would anybody would log in and see that on this feed, you would say, "Hey, have you heard, for example, have you heard about graduation?" You would post it, and it would just populate. And it would just dynamically populate. And if someone wanted to respond to you, they would just post it, and it would populate down there as well. So that's just a quick explanation. All right, guys, now let's talk about lessons learned. One lesson that could be gleaned from my experience working on this project is the importance of reaching out to others when you need help. A developer better than I once told me that 80% of coding is reading error messages, and I got a lot of errors while trying to put this project together. I can remember a problem I had in particular was not being able to load a new topic or something in my form. It was very frustrating. It was a low point in the project. And what I eventually ended up doing is, I didn't know that this existed, but Professor Thompson told me about a meetup group of people that do development in my area, and I went to a meeting of theirs on the evening of November the 4th, and I got help. I was able through that connection and going onto their Slack channel or going to another morning meeting of theirs. I was able to get a lot of help in overcoming some of the snags that I got in my project. And without that help, I don't know that this project is necessarily possible. As I mentioned before, the coding is above my head, and I don't know that necessarily sitting there and like Googling and dealing with the burnout already, like Googling aimlessly and not finding looking at the tutorial, not finding out, necessarily what's wrong, just languishing like that was going to help anything. So sometimes you need an expert, you need someone that knows better than you to rely on to try to glean information off of to overcome barriers when it comes to projects. Another lesson that can be gleaned from this is that the importance of consistently working on a project, especially relatively around early on in the project or earlier at least in the process. I had there was a period of time where I took a week off or something, worked a day on the project, and then took another week off. And then later on in the project, I took like 9 days off or something. Now, the things of life kind of got to me throughout this project. I've been in school for minus one semester for about 8.5 years. I've been burned out. And among other things, it was hard to, especially in the beginning, to consistently work on this project. I had another class that I was dumping a ton of time into as well. But with coding in general, with working on a project as well, you want to be consistently working on it so you're not like and documenting and stuff. So you're not like jumping into it being rusty and like not knowing what the heck is necessarily going on, especially if you're not documenting it. So that's something that is important and that can be gleaned from my experience as well. The final lesson I'd like to talk about is I'll quickly talk about one more lesson as well as talking about failure of the project really fast. A final lesson that's important to me to know is previously I only had worked on about 3 projects, and this is only my 4th class I've successfully will have completed that had anything to do with that did coding. You know what I mean? So I don't have a lot of experience, and in between my classes where I worked on these projects, I didn't make myself code or anything. So I'm not the strongest coder, and I still got a lot to learn if I'm wanting to do what I want to do. But something that was definitely impressed on me is that there's a lot of coding knowledge that goes into creating a functional web application that takes data and spits it out, like that has a backend component to it. It's a lot of work, and it's complicated too to an average person. So that's something that you guys that want to do web development, or especially it's more for me to hear, maybe even there's a lot to learn if you're doing something from scratch, especially. And it's quite a broad thing. It's something that you got to take bite-sized pieces of and like consistently work at every day to develop your skill. And that's an important thing that was impressed on me while I was working on my project. Unfortunately, a failure of my project, guys, is obviously, I kind of mentioned it earlier, it's not all the way complete. As I mentioned, there's no tutoring, but it'd be like textbook rental. But with textbook rental, as I showed you, there's no link here. That would make it more, actually working. You can easily imagine a link being there, but there is none there, so that's a failure that I have. And also another failure would be that there's no notification system. I was working on it earlier in the project, but I hit a error with that, left it alone, and continued on to my project. And with that, guys, the success is obviously I'm excited that I put this together, and that'll be good enough to turn in, I hope, and that I'm finally graduating. This was definitely an interesting experience for me, and I hope that you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.